There it is. Hello, everyone. My name is Wade the Wallaby. Now, of course, that anybody would know what I should say, wolf coyote is. Now, obviously, I've modified this a lot of times. In most cases, it's been modified very well. And the reason why it's been modified is because I realized now this mission is going to be a future mission that is possibly going to go to crafts. I don't know what is going to launch, when it's going to launch, possibly in 2030 or 2050, or maybe 20, just somewhere around that future. And so, yeah, the reason why there's seven probes is like, how can you fit seven probes? Now, there's two launchers I'm going to use. If the wearable space plane is not successful, I can always rely on, of course, the Atlas 5 rocket without the Vulcan. Hopefully that doesn't go in place, which probably will be because of how time works. And it's going to go, if you don't know what the Atlas 5 is, it's basically a rocket that is, you know what? Okay, seven probes to Mars. That's a lot. We usually put three or one or single or even just orbiters, landers, or even impactors, which didn't work on the surface of Mars. And of course, there's variants that are types such as landers, rovers, um, orbiters, flybys, which is not going to be used, well, possibly, because this is also a lander, possibly a rover, mostly landers, and orbiter and flyby. Now, of course, and now this is a very stage of events. It's pretty small, and that's why it's going to be launched at wearable space plane or the Atlas 5. Now, this might not seem to be interesting, but I'm just trying to tell you this is the version 2 of my ideas. Instead of just the landers are going to be more tougher. And the reason why it's going to have like a shell, probably going to be nicknamed called like a crab or something, or hermit crab with the shells or whatever they're called, because it might look like that. That is, I should say, quote unquote, what will be well, the crafts are going to be named. Well, for right now, is they're not going to be called werewolf. They're going to be called wolf coyote, and wolf coyote is the main mission. They're the ones that are supposed to put balloons on Mars. Now, of course, since Mars is a very thin atmosphere, we're going to use hydrogen, and the hydrogen is much more lighter, or some type of thing that actually, there's one type of gas that does. I think it works with carbon, and it's somewhere around like helium, but helium is very low on Earth, so we're going to use hydrogen because hydrogen is most likely not nitrogen, because nitrogen, even though nitrogen is very possible, hydrogen is most likely flammable, but it is very useful. And these little probes are going to be about the size bigger than this. Basically, they're going to be two of them, wolf and coyote. I have told you about this, baby, but I'm going to say it again. These thing probes. I know this is a very complicated thing, but I'm going to try to simplify it without any autism interference. With Coyote, we're going to have solar panels, and also they're going to have I should say, a turbine, and it's going to be also it can be electricity to actually power it to move it around. It's going to use fins to move around through the wind, and it's going to have solar panels on the side, and it's got two cameras. One of them is the navigation cam, and one of them is the navigation cam is color, and it will move around on the side. The bottom one is for ground. It can zoom in. Now it can't reduce. It cannot go up or down. It could maybe in the future, maybe version 3 or something like that, or version point, because I'm going to use the versions to tell how it will advance over time and get a little bit more realistic. Now, when launched, we're going to do wearable spaceplane first. Atlas 5 rockets is going to be like that. So we're going to do wearable spaceplane. Might be a bit complicated. It will first launch stage with the jet engines. It will go back to Earth. Wearable spaceplane will continue with velocity until it gets into orbit, and then it would basically go flyby. It would do it would stay at its velocity. It won't slow down because it needs to stay at that speed. Once it will basically go around the far side of the moon, and then it will open and deploy and then it would detach. And this will eventually will, because of the detach force, to make sure it goes far out of the fumes, the rover spaceplane will reverse and then it will start to descend on the moon on the front side, because that's how things works, and will go landing on the moon base or whatever it is to visit supplies or etc. As the um, as the Wolf A, or I should say Wolf inner stage. Now, this is the first stage. This stage here is one that probe. So this is be probe one. Probe one is going to be possibly a flyby, because it's going to have a camera, a with extendable camera, and it's going to look around. Experiments are be on there. A colored camera, zoom in, and also ultraviolet and also infrared. And it's going to take pictures of Phobos and Deimos and Mars, etc. And it is a zoom, but doesn't zoom that far. If lucky, it might do a flyby, but this thing will take it far away from the moon to make sure it reaches to Mars, to a trajectory to Mars. And it's gonna have little RCF thrusters. It has its own, so it's a probe. It's gonna have solar panels, a probe. It's gonna have experiments. So it's not gonna be like a dead thing. Is the reason why I want to make so many probes is because I don't want to waste as much space junk in around Mars, to know, to use them instead of just put them away as for trash. And be that, I want them to be actual probes so they can be workable in case of so many of them. I mean, that's a odd if all of them fails. Now, of course, Wolf Coyote, if Wolf, okay, so yeah, never mind. So yeah, the stage will go on its bigger stage, and it will keep going until it turns off. I don't know about the math, so I'm just gonna get estimates. It will go until it reaches Mars. It would detach, well, or whatever, if it has enough fuel. If it doesn't, then it will detach early on. It will use its RCS and rest of its fuel to position itself to do flybys. And of course, when it stages, the third stage, or should I say second stage, which is another probe, same thing but smaller, it will do the Mars orbit transition, which is going to use the fuel to orbit. Now, there is not going to be solid fuel because it's going to be turned off and on. Once it makes into orbit, it will wait for a few, whatever, how many days or maybe weeks, about maybe a month, but we have to do it like early, and it would keep orbiting it until at the right amount of time when we figure out where a good landing spot is to where to go. Because these wolf coyote are basically explorers, one of them is going to go for looking for terrain, which is wolf, and coyote is going to go look for spacecrafts, and once it's done it will look over, and then about that time humans are probably on Mars. And the reason why, to check out failures such as Mars probes that were from Soviet Union, just giving up if they were okay, if they can be, just to take pictures for, and of course Beagle 2, Mars polar lander. Hopefully the cold temperatures don't make it too cold around the poles. Of course, visit live ones such as Inside Mars 2020 if it makes it, and the rest of those probes, even possibly maybe Mars climate if they find it, which means that it need to breathe that syndicates. Yeah, it is a probe instead of a asteroid or a meteorite that comes down, or take out for example, yeah, all of those, or the Franklin thingy rover, what's it called, whatever. And so the second stage will make into orbit, and then once it finds a spot, it would detach. Now that thing is actually going to position itself around Phobos and Deimos. We never get a good look at Phobos and Deimos, and it's going to try to look very close to Phobos or Deimos, depending on the situation, and possibly orbit, which is a probably big breakthrough. And because of low gravity, may land. Now, of course, if landing, you have to do polar orbit so it can do a full map, and then will land as it rotates, and then we go to the next moon. If you're not, then we're not lucky, but that would be a good challenge. Now, the third stage is the inner stage. This thing has its own solid fuel engine. That thing is going to go to deorbit the craft. And the solar panels for the craft, That's a probe. That counts as a probe. That is opposed to, well, it's called Wolf C, Wolf Charlie. For now, it's called that way, but it might change. And now that thing is a small craft that's going to use parachutes. Now this thing is supposed to be destroyed. Most of it. It's called the when the time when it's so many months, it charges the batteries for the trip to the Mars, and then it will detach, and then once it gets in Mars atmosphere, its solar panels will retract, and then it will try to survive. If it does, that's cool, and it will deploy a parachute, and will use small retro rockets on the bottom to just slow it down, and then touch down, deploy its solar panels, and then deploy a massive antenna that is well designed to do a experiment. Now, this experiment might be impossible to do, but it's something if we could do for a cheaper transmission. That transmission is going to go all the way from Mars to all the way to Chicago. This is obviously a reference to the movie Rampage. I wanted to do a reference that is possibly like that, transmitting so far distances, but not, making a serious way, but by doing that. But if it's not successful, if it's somewhere else, not communicating with it, it can also go communicate with the probes or just Earth, trying to use a high gain and small gain antenna for a backup supply. It will also will have a camera, but it would not be as well as but it would tell us if we're landed or something like that. It won't do that much stuff. It would just be there, and of course, it will stay quite a while. Now the I changed the parts for the Wolf Coyote, Wolf B and C. The Wolf A is going to be with the Wolf Coyote probes with the balloons, or I should say weather balloons. Okay, so Wolf B is gonna be the stage that will stay in flight, and the heat shield is gonna be Wolf uh A. Heat shield is Wolf A, and it's gonna use its descent thrusters to because it would detach. The heat shield won't detach for later on, later than most heat shields would, but it's gonna use the Wolf B. It is gonna deploy a parachute, and it's gonna be a bit bigger. It has a very big shell, and inside there's some doors that will open up. If it's landed, it will open up with cameras, even using a missile that will explode the surface in the far distances, deploying a rover if it has to, if it has enough. I mean, it might change over time, and so yeah, eventually it will land, and then success if it does, and has it will use its parachute. But then because Effect Beagle 2 has a problem, it's gonna use retro rockets, and it's gonna use and it's gonna go down there, and it's gonna land, and the parachute will still stick on. Now, as that happened about a few minutes earlier, um, maybe seconds, whatever, Werewolf Alpha, no, Werewolf Alpha is going to use a fire descent landing. That's the heat shield. And it's going to descend down with 3 engines that use gimbal, possibly RCS, to stabilize it, and then we'll just keep going, and then land. Once it does that, a camera will deploy, just like the Opportunity or Spirit would look like, and we'll just observe the area. And then maybe when all the landers have landed and do their thing, Wolf Coyote will deploy, and then they will first deploy the weather balloon, and then they will go up. There are tanks on the side, so they will fill them up to inflate them, and then they will be released once everything is good. Now, Wolf A and B have a wind turbine that's going to use to have it has extra batteries, and they're both are going to do the stuff to power it. Because I don't think we had anything like that. I mean, Surviving Mars did demonstrate that, but they're more massive. If you don't know what it is, it's a game. Um, but yeah, I mean, wow. we get the idea. So, I mean, this is an idea that might work, but it will start to change if things, um, but it's a small process that, is, but Wolf Coyote will go on their adventure, and, if, we get to Mars, these will be there and we'll take pictures of the, well, we'll get the idea. But of course, I mean, it's just an idea, but this is like, yeah, but I'm not going to go to detail because I think I'm getting really kind of tired. So I hope you guys enjoy your, watch of this, and thank you for watching. See ya.